Let me tell you a story about this little game called BattleBit Remastered. Now, at a glance, your first thought might be,
that looks like Roblox.
But if you look at it a little bit closer, you might realize why this game is consistently in the top 10 on Steam charts, beating out the likes of Modern Warfare 2 Warzone and Destiny 2, and has sold almost 2 million copies in its first month. And would you believe me if I told you that this game was developed by only 3 people? Well, you best start believing in indie dev masterpieces.
Turner, you're in one.
One of the craziest things about BattleBit's success is that it's not a hugely innovative game. It takes much obvious inspiration from the old Battlefield entries and other shooters like Squad, places that concept inside a world with Roblox graphics, and charges $15 on Steam. No strings attached. BattleBit is filling a void in the market where the franchise that inspired it has gone down a very confusing path of alienating its core fan base. Over the last several years, EA and DICE have continued to miss the mark in so many fundamental ways for the Battlefield franchise, just not understanding what players loved about the games in the first place. And BattleBit proves that those players are still out there looking for an experience that will replicate the big team battle gameplay of those older titles. Somehow these 3 developers have managed to create a game that addresses all the feedback that fans of Battlefield have been asking for. Destructible environments, a detailed server browser, a functioning scoreboard with all the stats you'd be interested in, map and game mode voting, with the inclusion of voting for day or night options, a competent class system that synergizes very well with each other, lengthy progression systems to work towards unlocking new equipment and weapon upgrades, and cosmetics earned through various milestones in the gameplay. Oh, and no battle passes or microtransactions. Might this list be the reason BattleBit has so many more players than all the Battlefield titles combined right now?
Yes! Yes!
These developers went ahead and made the Battlefield game they've always wanted, and took great ideas from other similar shooters like proximity chat, bandaging your own wounds to prevent bleedouts, and building cover or smashing through walls. When developers make games, they would want to play themselves. This is the result. So why does this prove that AAA developers are out of touch? Well, my good friend Justin Truman has something he wanted to tell you all.
We make games we want to play.
All right, hell yeah, Justin, that's good stuff.
Because we took down that motto a little while after D2 launch.
Oh, what? Where are you going with this?
We make games we want to play. It sounds a little too much like it's just like gatekeeping for bald middle-aged white guys like me.
Oh, fuck off, you big lamp!
Have you ever heard a more out-of-touch statement? But this doesn't come as much of a shock because most AAA studios have proven time and time again that they don't make games they want to play. They make games that will lock you into spending hundreds if not thousands on in-game purchases, and sink hundreds if not thousands of hours of your life inside them. Now, it wasn't always this way. Developers used to really care about the games they were creating. And some might say this is only a leadership or publisher issue, and the game developers working at these studios are being forced to make the game the way leadership wants. And that's absolutely true to a certain degree, because it seems that maybe some developers at these larger studios are actually making games they do want to play. But ironically, it's not games that gamers want to play. For example, when Elden Ring came out, there were some notable developers from both Ubisoft and Guerrilla Games that criticized Elden Ring for not being user-friendly enough, criticizing the game's design at every single level, from the UX and the quest design to the level design and the lack of an easy mode. Essentially criticizing Elden Ring for not adhering to the generic cookie-cutter design found in every other open-world Ubisoft game. But what these developers don't realize is Elden Ring's success is due to the fact that it did not follow the AAA gaming trends of other major publishers. It has a very old-school design that doesn't hold players' hands every step of the way, sometimes forcing the player to think and figure things out on their own. I know, what a concept. Because this is apparently how Elden Ring should look, according to these developers. And what's funny about this picture is that despite it being an obvious meme, it's not far off from reality. Plenty of modern games look exactly like this. Now, Elden Ring is not a perfect game. There are plenty things to criticize, but not adhering to modern gaming standards isn't one of them. And when game developers at these studios put out awful takes like this, maybe you'll understand why I don't put all game developers on a pedestal like they're infallible, perfect beings. Because a lot of the developers are clearly out of touch with what gamers want. Elden Ring sold more copies than Ubisoft can even fathom, and these devs don't understand why. They don't get it. And on the flip side, some developers are absolutely being held back from creating a game that gamers would love, all the while dealing with constant incompetence that surrounds them, or the management and publishers above them. And for those developers, I absolutely sympathize with and hope to hell find a way to break out and deliver gamers an experience they made driven by passion. Because the success of games like BattleBit prove that gamers who reject modern gaming trends are still a very large and substantial market to appeal to. Now let's pick on Ubisoft a little bit more here for a second. A publisher that encompasses the 80s low-budget horror movie trope of the game industry, meaning that every sequel they put out is somehow worse than the original. A company that never learns the most important lesson from one of their own characters.
Did I ever tell you the definition of insanity? And then I started seeing it everywhere I looked, all these fucking pricks. Everywhere I looked, doing the exact same fucking thing. Over and over and over and over and over again. Thinking, this time, it's gonna be different.
Ubisoft was once a company that was a trendsetter, leading the industry across several genres. Tactical shooters, stealth titles, open world games, and pushing the industry forward while publishing many other great projects. But with the success of games like Assassin's Creed and Far Cry, they've become extremely stagnant, and every one of their other major franchises have slowly become this homogenized blob of bloated open world checklist simulators, forever canceling any and all projects that might be interesting and break that mold, or sleep on some of their best IPs, or hold others hostage in development hell because they can't figure out a way to make it print them money yet. And it's sad to see a company that once published a wide array of competent games, being a trendsetter, simply resort to creating the same game over and over and begin to chase trends. Sometimes it works out for them financially, in the case of Assassin's Creed adopting the Witcher 3 formula, even if it is a bastardized half-hearted attempt, and other times it doesn't work out for them, in the case of Hyperscape. This isn't the only flop due to trend chasing from Ubisoft, but it might be the largest. In 2020, the Battle Royale genre had largely established the big players among Fortnite, Apex, and Warzone. So when Ubisoft came late to the party with Hyperscape near the end of 2020, it might have been inevitable for it to end so poorly. But it wasn't just because it was late to the party, there were plenty of other factors preventing its success. So no matter how much money Ubisoft paid streamers to promote the game, it just didn't stand a chance. Now there's a reason I bring all of this up. Not just Ubisoft, but almost all AAA studios were once the trendsetters. There's a few years in particular where we saw the release of so many groundbreaking and genre-defining games. 1998 is probably the best example with games like Half-Life, StarCraft, Metal Gear, Ocarina of Time, Pokemon Red and Blue, and many, many more. Or even 2007 with BioShock, Assassin's Creed, Uncharted, Mass Effect, TF2, COD 4, so many others. The idea of the AAA space delivering that many trend-setting games in a single year now seems unimaginable, because none of the largest studios or publishers are looking to lead or innovate anymore. And I think the last real time we saw any innovation was maybe 2013 or 2011. Not that there haven't been a few solid titles since then, but not many trend-setting ones. These days innovation is primarily coming from the indie scene. Where some might say that Fortnite set the Battle Royale trend, it was actually indie developers that set that trend with mods for games like Arma 3, games like H1Z1 King of the Hill, The Culling, then PUBG, and finally taken over by Epic Games with Fortnite. And then Apex and Warzone, we know the rest of the story from there. Extraction shooters are looking like the new Battle Royale. Various indie teams have taken a crack at it, a few slightly larger teams have developed games like Hunt Showdown and Escape from Tarkov, and now Bungie, fully backed by Sony, are jumping on the extraction shooter train, hoping to flesh out an established genre and pump some AAA level polish onto the project. And while I'm not too keen on the idea of the game myself, I don't doubt it will make a pretty big splash in the gaming scene. Because as much as it pains me to say, Bungie are some of the biggest trendsetters for the corporations, not so much the gamers. With the Destiny franchise, Bungie single-handedly set in motion towards a trend for live service, and loot systems taking over every single game, and charging premium price for the product, then stuffing it with microtransactions on top of it. The big corpos have been following Bungie's lead ever since 2014, trying to make their own Destiny, which have flopped time and time again. And it's why Sony purchased Bungie, because Bungie have set a precedent in the industry. Not to create innovative games, or even good ones, as our good friend Justin Truman always reminds us, but to create innovative ways of printing money. And now this all comes full circle, back to BattleBit. Because while the AAA industry chases live service trends, over-bloated with ridiculously high dev counts, putting out mediocre products hell-bent on destroying the industry with monetization, ironically, BattleBit shows that a lot of indie devs are now taking inspiration from AAA developers of the past and iterating on their visions and seeing a lot of success. It's kind of crazy to see how the inspiration has essentially flipped from AAAs iterating on indies to now indies iterating on AAA of the past. Again, sort of a full circle kind of moment. I've said it before, but I'll say it again. Indies are carrying gaming right now for me. I've been playing so much BattleBit and plenty of other games like Tunic, which is also a great example of a game that borrows from AAA gaming of the past and puts its own twist and spin on that classic Legend of Zelda style. But I really do recommend checking out at least one of these games on screen right now, because they might surprise you. But let me know if you agree that AAA developers are out of touch with what you guys want. Of course, AAA will always have an audience of some kind, but I'm assuming if you've made it this far into the video, you might care a little bit more about genuinely good games that have a soul, rather than games designed around focus group testing and statistics. Hope you enjoyed the video, subscribe for more, and I'll see you all in the next one.